Hello everyone, thank you to the winter 2018-19 forecast from GazWeather.com. So done 3 months worth of winter updates, 13 winter updates, as well as 3 seasonal model roundups. It's all been building up to this point. We have now got to the point where we have to release the winter 2018-19 forecast for you. So there's no more data we can show really. We just have to bring everything together and then show you our final analogues. And so that's what we're going to be doing for this video. So I'm going to go for you very shortly. Just say it's going to be a fairly long video. It won't be as long as some of the videos that we've done this season, but it will be quite a long video. So get yourself a comfy chair, get yourself a cup of tea, and just hope you enjoy the winter forecast. The video will be placed on the winter forecast page, not winter updates page, but winter forecast page later on today with a written summary going over everything that we discuss in the video, going over our analogues and then giving you the forecast. I have to say a big thank you to our analogues guru James Ackrill for really slaving away on this one. James has spent so many hours compiling the analogues, also bringing together the spreadsheet, and that's what we're going to start off with in a moment. That's kind of like brings together the entire GazWeather's winter forecast methodology. So you will see which years are the closest in terms of 2018 in terms of our methodology first of all, and then we'll show you the analogues. But a big thank you to James as ever for coming through for us with these analogues. Big thank you to James for doing that. I also have to say a big thank you to our friend Richard Trott. Richard has provided lots of input into this season of updates and also into the forecast as well. So big thank you to Richard Trott, and also big thank you to Terry Scully. Terry Scully has provided a lot of input, and it's like a guiding hand on the shoulder, if you like. So a big thank you to James, a big thank you to Terry, and a big thank you to Richard for all of their help in the winter updates, and also of course in terms of the winter forecast as well. So I think that's pretty much everything I'm going to tell you. Just to say that the 14th Christmas update, that's going to be with you this evening around 5 or 6 o'clock this evening, and then this video will be placed on the winter forecast page later on after that. I usually go for everything that we've talked about in terms of the winter updates one by one before I get on with the forecast. So I'm not going to do that for you this time. I decided to try and cut the time down a little bit. It's very long, been a very long day. I'm doing this video at 10 to midnight. The first video that I recorded, I had problems with it, so I had to get rid of that and start again. So you know what we've been talking about anyway. We've been discussing ENSO, been discussing what's happening with sea surface temperature anomalies. Started off with the Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies, of course, favouring a positive NEO. So you know everything that we've been discussing. But if you don't, then you can go back and have a look at all of the winter updates and refresh your memory. So what I'm going to start off with for the winter 2018-19 forecast is our analog spreadsheet. So this brings everything together that we've been talking about through this season of winter updates, and we managed from this to get our closest years in terms of 2018. So I'll talk you through the columns first of all. This is what James has been really working on so very hard over the past week. I always never feel like I do this justice really, because I have to get on, show you the analogue, so I can never give this as much time in the video as James spends working on it. But we can't do the forecast any other way than to show you, than to bring it together with a spreadsheet and to show you it. So I'll talk you through the columns first of all. This blue column just here is all of the sea surface temperature stuff that we've been talking about through this season winter update. So we've been looking at ENSO in terms of La Nina to El Nino. We've been talking about ENSO in terms of La Nina to ENSO neutral on the positive side. We've been talking about ENSO in terms of negative neutral, so neutral but on the negative side to El Nino. We've been talking about Modoki, central-based El Ninos, and we've also been talking about Atlantic sea surface temperature anomalies in the autumn. So that blue column covers all of the ocean stuff. The yellow column just here is covering solar activity in terms of solar minimum, first winter, so solar minimum first winter prior, and also solar minimum, the true solar minimum winters, if you like. So these are like 1 year before solar minimum. These are like the true solar minimum winters. And this column just here is depicting solar minimum winters that happen within even solar cycles. This column is for the QBO, so mature easterly QBOs with a summer peak, and QBOs that are going from easterly to westerly, switching in the winter. Then we carry on and we go over here and we see that, again, we've been talking about the summer. The very first thing we started off talking about, actually, in the first two winter updates was the very hot and dry summer we had. So we've got summers with CETs of 16.5 degrees and above, and dry summers as well. We've talked about September in terms of September CET rainfall and pattern. We've talked about October in terms of October CET and rainfall and pattern. And one thing that we haven't really discussed a great deal, and it's always very difficult at this point because the full data isn't in, is preliminary November data. Now, in the very last winter update we did last week, we did talk about November pattern matching. We did a little bit of November pattern matching. Haven't talked about the November CET, but we have included it within our spreadsheet. And so we're looking at November's that come out with a CET between 7.8 and 8.7, placing November 2018, which comes out with CET, I think, of around 8.2, more or less slap bang in the middle. So that's the way we sort of look at everything we've been talking about in the winter updates. And of course, these are the years going all the way back to 1850. So we've got the year of 1850 just there, which is as far back as we can go in terms of the reanalysis, and we can go all the way down to 2017. Just here, 2018 not included in the data, of course, because the year is incomplete. So what we're going to do is try to match up as many years in terms of the things we've been discussing in the winter updates to try to match up as many years as we can, if you like. So let's take 1850 as an example. That's the year of 1850 just there. And we see that for ENSO, 1850 has no matches at all. So for ENSO, no matches in the year of 1850. There's also no matches in 1850 for solar activity, and there's no matches in terms of the QBO either. Of course, we wouldn't know what the QBO was in 1850 because we've only been monitoring the QBO since the 1950s. We can see, but also in terms of the summer central temperatures and the dry summer, no connection there with 2018. And in terms of the autumn data, again, no connections at all to 1850. So for the total score, which is bringing all of these matches together, the total score for the year of 1850 is 0. There are no matches at all in the year of 1850 to 2018 in terms of the Gauss Weatherly's methodology. Let's try and find a year that is slightly better matched. So I'm going to go down to the year of, let's go down to the year of 2006, a long way down the column just there. So the year of 2006 does actually come out with a score of 4 in the Gauss Weatherly's methodology. It's a match in terms of being an El Nino to La Nina year in 2006, and then if we follow along the column, we can see there are no other matches to there. But then let's carry on and scroll you through to here, and we can see that for 2006 we do match 2018 for 2006 in terms of the summer CET, and also in terms of being a dry summer, and there's a match in terms of the preliminary November CET as well, which brings us out for 2006 with a score of 4. We get a total score of 4 for 2006, which is relatively high, actually. A score of 4 is relatively high, but probably not high enough to include in our final analogues. So our final analogues, we want to narrow that down a little bit more. So let's try and see if we can narrow that down a little bit more for our final set of analogues. And I'm going to take you up to the year of, let's go up to the year of 1975, just here. So that's the year of 1975 just there. Again, let's move the highlighter along, and we can see that in terms of 1975, it is a match in terms of the solar minimum winter, coming out with a score of 1. It's also a match in terms of being a solar minimum winter in an even solar cycle. That gives us a score of 0.5. And then we scroll along and we can see that 1975 is also a match in terms of the summer CET, and being a dry summer, it's a match in terms of the September CET as well. And it's also in 1975, I think that's about, let's see if that's the last match that we have in 1975. So yeah, that's the last match we have in terms of 1975. It brings us out with a total score of 4.5. So that's a little bit better, and we do include that in our top 10 analogues. So you see where this is working. We're looking for the highest scores from the years, and those highest scores then are combined to produce the final analogues that we are looking at. So we're looking for any year that has a score of 4.5 or more, and that gives us our top 10 analogues for 2018. So I'm going to talk you through the top 10 analogues now, and this is it. In terms of number 10, we have 1984 coming out with a score of 4.5. The winter, of course, is 84-85. It's a cold winter with below average heights to our south, and we have the blocking signature up to the north, strong area of high pressure to the north, and that leaves us bringing in these cold easterly winds in the winter of 84-85. So the first match within the top 10 in terms of the score, the first match is 1984-85, a cold winter. Then we've got 1975-1976. Again, 1975, as we just saw, looking at the table, comes out with a score of 4.5. The winter of 75-76 has this area of above average heights to the west of the country, with the below average heights up to the north, and that leaves us bringing in this westerly flow. So it's a relatively mild winter, 75-76, but it's also a pretty dry winter too. At number 8, we have 1968, again with a score of 4.5. The winter is 68-69. 68-69 is turning up as a pretty decent match for this coming winter in terms of the analogues. And again, with this one, we are placing an area of below average heights to our south and a strong blocking signal up to our north. That's favouring bringing in the winds from an easterly direction, and so we favour a cold winter for the winter of 68-69 there. Particularly cold in February of 1969, of course. Number 7, with a score again of 4.5, is the winter of 1953-1954. This one is another cold winter, this one favouring high pressure over Scandinavia with below average heights to our south, and we bring in the wind from an east or northeasterly direction. Again, that's particularly cold at the end of the winter in February 1954. Number 6 is 1995, and this one has a score of 5. 5 matches in the year of 1995 to 2018. The winter of 95-96 is another cold winter. At the moment, our analogues are very much favouring a colder winter outcome, interestingly, with the blocking signature to the north and the below average heights to the south, and that brings in those easterly winds. Again, we favour a cold winter there in 95-96. At number 5, again with a score of 5, it's 1983. The winter of 83-84 panned out like this, with the below average heights to the north and the northwest, the above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic, and we bring in that strong west to northwesterly wind. Rather interesting winter, in that have a lot of cold zonality, but it is basically an Atlantic driven winter in 83-84. Number 4, with a score of 5, is 1976-1977. This is a bit of a front-loaded winter. So those other winters we've just looked at tended to be colder later in the winter. This one is more of a front-loaded winter, with a blocking signal up to the north, the below-average heights to the south, and we bring in those east or northeasterly winds. The winter of 76-77 is cold early on in December and January, and then it gets milder in February. The third winter is, or I should say number 3, is 1911, and it's the winter of 1911-1912. Again, this year is scoring 5 in terms of our total score. So this one, again, with the below average heights to the west, does have a little bit of a blocking signal up to the north, but not a particularly strong one. And so this one is favouring bringing in westerlies, southwesterlies. It's a mild but also really quite a wet winter, 1911-1912. Number 2, in terms of our top 10 best analogues, is 1937, with a score of 6. So this one is higher than those other ones that we've just been looking at in terms of the total score. The winter of 37-38 looks like that, with above average heights to the north, below average heights to the south, and we bring in those east or northeasterly winds. So that again did have some cold weather at times, but isn't remembered as being a classically cold winter in 37-38. And then number 1 with a score of 6.5. So this is the best pattern match in terms of the Gazov's methodology to 2018. And it's rather an obscure year. It's 1913, followed by the winter of 1913-1914. And this one is rather a mild, sort of nondescript type winter, not remembered for anything particular other than, I suppose, being the winter that occurred before World War I, the last winter before World War I started. But really, it's not remembered for anything in particular. It's just a rather mild and rather unsettled winter. I want to take you back to the spreadsheet so that you can see why 1913 is the best match for 2018, how it's matched up to 2018. So this is 1913 just here. So let's carry on along and see how it's matching up to 2018 and coming out with a score of 6.5. So in terms of ENSO, it's a negative neutral to Nino match. So it was going from ENSO neutral to El Nino. It's also a match in terms of being a solar minimum winter and a solar minimum winter in an even solar cycle. So again, there's a connection there to 2018. And then we move along and we can pick up the column and 2013 just there. We see it's a match in terms of being a dry summer. It's also a match in terms of September rainfall between 60 and 72 millimetres. It's a match in terms of the October Central England temperature as well, and it's also a match in terms of the preliminary November CET. And so that brings us out with a total score for 1913 of 6.5, and so therefore in terms of all of these years that we've been looking at with the Gazov's winter 2018-19 forecast methodology, the year of 1913 and the winter of 1913-1914 comes out as the best match. And of course that is how the winter of 1913-1914 looked. But what happens if you bring all of those together? What would happen if you combined all of those and came up with the analogues for the winter of 2018 2018-19, well, you're going to find out very shortly. That's what we're going to be doing next. We talk for 20 minutes. I'm going to pause the video there, and then when we come back, I'll show you the analogues for the winter of 2018-2019, and then I'll give you the GasLovers.com winter 2018-19 forecast. So I'll see you in around 2 minutes. Get yourself a cup of tea and a couple of biscuits, and we'll meet back in around 2 minutes' time. All right, we're back and we're ready to resume the GasLovers.com winter 2018-19 forecast. So I was just, before I pause the video, I was just explaining that how we brought our analogues together, the top 10 best analogues for the for this year's winter forecast. We've gone through them, and I'll show you the winters that are the closest, we think are going to be the closest matches to this year in terms of the GasLovers.com winter 2018-19 forecast methodology. But now, of course, we've seen those winters individually. Now let's bring them together and show you the actual analogues for the winter of 2018-19 in terms of those top 10 best matches. So in terms of the top 10 best matches, this is how the Decembers are coming out, and we can see that for the Decembers we get below average heights to our south, and then we favour above average heights to be to the north and to the northeast. And so for the Decembers we do have a blocking signal. We could favour colder conditions during the Decembers, not a classically blocked month because the centre of that high pressure is a very long way away from us over here. But as I say, we do possibly favour colder incursions during the course of the Decembers with those top 10 best analogues. But that's how the Januaries look, and look how much stronger the blocking signal is with those top 10 matches in the Januaries. We have a very strong blocking signal to our north, really strong blocking signal up there with below average heights down to the south, and so this favours pulling in cold east or northeasterly winds. The Januaries, therefore, are favoured to be substantially colder potentially than the Decembers with those top 10 scoring years. The February is also showing a very strong blocking signal indeed, with again below average heights centred to our south and above average heights centred to be to the north, and again we favour bringing in easterly winds in the February. So yes, December could have some cold snaps, but probably not favoured because the blocking signal isn't strong enough in the December. It's not favoured to be a particularly cold month overall, but the Januaries and the Februaries are definitely favouring colder conditions with these analogues. And then we go through to March, and that also has quite a strong blocking signal in the Marches. Not as strong, interestingly, as it is in the Januaries and the Februaries, but it is still there to some degree with the below average heights down to the southwest. We possibly favour bringing up a rather milder southwesterly type influence in the Marches. The winters overall are favoured to be cold with these top 10 years, so we get a blocking signal centred to the north of the UK. Quite a strong blocking signal is up there with the below average heights down to the south. Again, that favours bringing in those winds from an easterly direction. That is primarily down to the Januaries and the Februaries, though less so for the Decembers and for the Marches. In terms of December through to March, so covering like the beginning of the winter through to the early part of the spring, again, same story. Overall, the anomaly favours blocking to be to the north with below average heights to the south, and again with these top 10 matches, we find that we bring the wind in from an easterly direction. Therefore, we do favour a colder than average period from December through to March. Now, we can do something that we've never done before with these top 10 matches, and that's show you temperature and precipitation anomalies as well. So James has also provided that for us. Big thank you, as always, to James for showing us, for getting us this data that I can show you. So in terms of those 10 top 10 scoring years. This is how the Decembers are coming out. And again, for much of Northern Europe, it's a colder than average signal for the Decembers. Although for the UK, for Ireland, Western Europe, it's a little bit closer to average. So not a particularly cold signal there. Southern, southeastern Europe favoured to be a little bit milder than average with these top 10 years. But look at January. Look how cold it gets across much of Central and Northern Europe in January, and that cold, those cold temperature is also extending into the west. So we see Western Europe, okay, not the coldest places in Europe, but certainly western parts of Europe are favoured to be colder than average. The UK favoured to be a little bit colder than average as well in January. The core of the cold is across many northern and central parts of Europe. And that's how February looks, another very cold month being favoured here across much of Central and Northern Europe in February. Colder than average temperature anomalies backing into the UK as well. So if this is right, we have a pair of cold months being favoured in January and February, with December close to average. Notice southeastern parts of Europe do look a little bit milder down there. A very cold, or even a severely cold month looks possible. I say possible, not probable, for northern parts of Europe. That's how March looks, and the cold temperature anomalies then kind of like just fade away and we go back to average, telling us that we probably see a reversion to something rather milder in the Marches. In terms of the top 10 scoring years, in terms of the winters, this is how they look when you put them all together, and they're coming out colder than average. A cold winter is favoured here for the UK this year, and a very cold winter is favoured for many central and northern parts of Europe as well. So yes, we are favouring a cold winter with our analogues, or at least our top 10 analogues this season. Precipitation wise, in December it looks like this, so it comes out drier than average across many central and northern parts of Europe, a little bit wetter than average down across southern parts of Europe. Then we go through to January and it turns wetter across southern Europe, so this is telling us that we'd like to be seeing a southerly tracking jet stream in January here. A lot drier than average further north. That's indicative of all of the blocking, of course. For the UK, we actually come out close to average with the precipitation anomaly in January. But remember, a cold month is favoured overall, so what precipitation does occur will probably be wintry, probably falling as snow. And then we go through to February, and again we find much of southern Europe coming out with a wetter than average signal with these top 10 scoring years in the Februaries. Again, northern Europe drier than average, northern Atlantic drier than average. That's indicative of all of the blocking that's going on across the northern latitudes. Marches show that it's wetter than average down to our southwest, drier than average up to our north in the Marches. So still a little bit of a blocking signal actually, even though the cold temperature anomaly kind of like fades out. In terms of the winters overall for these top 10 scoring years for our methodology, we see that, again, we favour a drier than average winter for many northern parts of Europe. That's because it's a cold winter. If it's cold, cold air holds less moisture than warm or hot air. So if it's cold, it would typically be dry, but any precipitation that does fall when it's cold often falls as snow. Also favoured to be drier than average to the northwest of us, wetter than average down through the south. Could be quite a wet winter down in the Mediterranean, I have to say. Now, if we narrow that down just a little bit more and look at the top 7, which score 5 or more in terms of our total terms of our total scores. So this narrows things down just a little bit more. We see that for December, again, we have quite a blocking signal in the Decembers, with above average heights generally to our north. We have the below average heights to our south. So whether we look at the top 10 or the top 7, we could definitely favour colder conditions really through the Decembers. And then we go through to the Januaries, and we see that the blocking signal extends back up to the North Pole. We have that blocking signal building to the north of the British Isles with the below average heights down to the south, and so that favours pulling in the wind from an east or northeasterly direction in the January. The blocking is probably just a little bit weaker with the top 7 compared to the top 10, but nevertheless, with these years that score 5 or more in terms of gas weather's methodology, I think we still have enough of a blocking signal to suggest that a colder than average January is likely. February does go a little bit different though. So in the Februaries with these top 7, we find the above average heights shifting more towards the east with the below average heights out to the west. And that just possibly leaves us a little bit milder and a little bit more unsettled actually in the Februaries with the top 7 as opposed to the top 10. Then the blocking looks like it comes back a little bit in the Marches and becomes centred more towards Greenland and Iceland with the below average heights down to our south. The overall winter signal is still a blocked signal overall with the above average heights again centred to the north of the country and the below average heights centred to the south. We therefore favour bringing in those winds from an easterly type direction. And then finally, just having a look at temperatures and precipitation for these top 7. We can see that in December, again, close to average temperatures for the UK and Ireland in the Decembers, but colder than average across parts of Scandinavia. But then we go through to January. It's a very similar story for the Januaries. In fact, possibly for the UK, it's a little bit cold with the top 7 as opposed to the top 10. There's not a lot in it, but it possibly is a little bit more widespread with those colder than average temperature anomalies. Again, we see most of Central and Northern Europe looking really cold in the Januaries, and those colder than average temperature anomalies do back into the west of Europe as well. And then we go through to February, and we see that again much colder than average across much of Northern Europe, but not as cold with the top 7 in February as opposed to the top 10 for the UK and for Ireland, telling us that the cold just relaxes and moves a little bit further east perhaps in the February, which is interesting because a lot of forecasts at the moment are indicating that February is likely to be the coldest month of winter, but on our methodology it does look as though January could be the coldest month of the winter. And then the cold again fading away with these top 7 scoring 5 or more. In March we see the cold and average temperature anomalies just kind of fading away. And then in terms of a winter overall, again, it's a colder than average Northern European winter being favoured here. Possibly not as cold with the top 7 as the top 10 for the UK and for Ireland. But again, I think we would probably favour a rather colder than average winter for the UK with so much cold sitting just to our east and to our northeast as well. So I do think that in terms of temperature, we are favouring a cold winter here, and we are favouring blocking as well from the GASWeather's winter forecast methodology. Precipitation with the top 7 looks like that, scoring 5 or more. We see that it's drier than average signal to our north, a little bit wetter than average to our south in December. But then look what happens in January, much drier than average to our north as that blocking signal is strengthened to the north of the UK, turns much wetter down to the south. So whether it's the top 10 or the top 7, we favour blocking. We favour drier conditions across Northern Europe and substantially wetter conditions across Southern Europe later on in the winter. And then that carries on through into February, although notice it does turn a little bit wetter for England, Wales and Ireland in February as that low pressure just comes that bit further northwards and the blocking is kind of like pushed a little bit away to the northeast. And then March also looking like that. So still quite a blocking signal in March, even though those cold and average temperature numbers are kind of fading away in the Marches. We do still have quite a blocking signal up to our north as well. The winters overall from precipitation with these top 7 are coming out like this. So it turns out to be drier than average across northeastern Europe and across the northern Atlantic, wetter than average across southern parts of Europe. Now, overall, it does look as though the GASWeathers.com winter forecast methodology is favouring is favouring a colder than average winter. I've got a caveat though, and I'm going to do so by showing the top two. So I've established that the top 2 years, which score at number 2 is 1937, which scores 6 on our total score in terms of Gazweather's methodology, and then we've got at number 1, 1913. We know that scores 6.5. But if we just bring these top 2 together, this is how the Decembers look, with below average heights to our east and above average heights to the north and to the northwest as well. And that leaves us doing something like that with flowing with the jet. So we could pull in some colder air, we could get some colder snaps in the Decembers. But then look what happens as we get through to the Januaries with these top 2 years. We find that the Januaries look mild with below average heights to the north. So colder signal for Eastern Europe though, with below average heights extending down into the east and the southeast of Europe with that trough. But for us in the UK, we actually favour a westerly flow in the Januaries. Very, very different outcome just with those top 2 years in the Januaries. And then the Februaries, that has a blocking signal, but it has it in totally the wrong position to give us any cold weather. So the blocking is actually centred across central parts of Europe with the below average heights out to the west of the country and to the south as well, and so that would leave us bringing up that southeasterly type wind there in the Februaries. And then the Marches, again, nothing really doing for cold weather either in the Marches, with above average heights to our south and below average heights up to the north. That leaves us bringing in this westerly flow. The winters, the 2 winters combined look like that. So it's not a particularly cold signal. There's a very weak blocking signal to the north. That's primarily down to what happens in the Decembers with the below average heights down to the south. Overall, these 2 are mild winters, and they are the best 2 matches to 2018 on our methodology. Now, other things that go against the chance of a cold winter is the NAO forecast. We started off with that, of course, when we released the NAO forecast in July. That's the very first thing that kicked off all of the winter 2018-19 stuff off. It kicked it off in July. That favours a positive NAO for this winter in terms of the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic. We've still got that warmer area in the northeastern Pacific as well. All this covered in the winter updates, and if you want to have a look at those, then do please go back and have a look at those winter updates. But the northeastern Pacific as well possibly also favours a rather milder winter. So there are a lot of caveats applied with this, where there's a lot of conflicting signals, and I wouldn't totally rule out a mild winter. However, that is not going to be what Gazweather is forecasting. Gazweather is forecasting a colder than average winter for the UK, the winter of 2018-19. We don't think it's going to be a very cold or a severely cold winter. We will pitch the anomaly at somewhere around 0.5 degree to 1 degree below average. So kind of a rather cold winter, slightly colder than average winter, but probably not a severely locked in winter. And the reason for that, again, it's down to what's happening in the Atlantic in terms of those sea surface temperature anomalies. It's down to what's happening in the northeastern part of the Pacific and other factors as well, just pulling us back from a very cold winter. Nevertheless, we are forecasting a colder than average winter, so let's get that on the table straight away. In terms of precipitation, we also think it's going to be a rather drier than average winter, although there will be periods of unsettled weather during the course of this winter, we think. So, although overall the anomaly in terms of precipitation will probably be a little bit drier than average, expect some quite significantly wet periods. So, one of the things going to happen is that we'll get these blocking areas of high pressure developing either over Scandinavia or to the north of the UK, which will bring us cold weather. It will probably bring us snow. I expect we'll have an above average instance of snow during the course of this winter in the UK. But at times the Atlantic will crank up and it will force that blocking away. And we may quite suddenly, quite abruptly, go into really quite unsettled, mild, stormy weather. And expect several bouts of gales, I would have thought, through the course of this winter. And in those more unsettled spells, we'll get heavy rain moving in from off the Atlantic Ocean as well, I would have thought. And so we moderate the cold, we ease the cold away, but then it comes back. It'll be that kind of winter where the cold never really goes away, and it does come back after milder, wetter, stormier interludes. So yes, overall I think we probably do get a slightly drier than average winter. Overall I think we get a slightly colder than average winter. But there will be periods of milder, wetter and windier weather in there as well. It's likely, I think we established from our analogues, it's likely to get colder as we go further on. There's a lot of speculation at the moment about January, about February I should say, being the coldest month of the winter. Our analogues are showing that January is likely to be the coldest month of this winter. But whether it's January or February, I think the idea is that we probably start off not particularly cold in December, although I suspect December should have a cold interlude at some point, and then it gets colder as the winter progresses. I think all 3 winter months will have cold outbreaks, so December, January and February should all have cold outbreaks at times, and we will know if this forecast is on track, I think, by whether we do get a spell of cold weather during December. So there is likely to be, at some point during December, I would have thought, a spell of northerly or easterly winds that should be quite cold. They probably won't last all that long, but we'll know if the forecast is on track by whether we get that cold outbreak during the course of December. Expect it to only be fairly brief, maybe a few days, and then it goes away. But we'll know by December whether the forecast is on track, and then the cold outbreak should get a lot more frequent as we go through January and through February too. The caveat is with those last 2 analogues, the best 2 analogues I should say, which is that this forecast could go spectacularly wrong because they are very mild winters. So I don't think we're going to be on the fence with this winter. It's not going to be one of those that's a little bit in between. It will either be a cold winter, coming out colder than average, or it will either be a mild, potentially very mild winter. So if this forecast goes wrong, it will go wrong really quite spectacularly, and we'll know pretty early on whether that's going to happen. I think we won't get the cold spell during December, and then January will be a fail as well. Again, I'm not expecting that at all. It's a low risk, but it is a risk that that could happen, that the forecast fails spectacularly. Equally, there is a chance, there is a fairly lowish chance, but the chance is there that this winter could be quite a lot colder than we're pitching it, and it might come out as a cold to a very cold winter. Again, both of those 2 extreme ranges are not favoured, but they are possible. But where we're pitching this is somewhere in the middle, which brings us out slightly colder than average. This should be the coldest winter since 2012-13. It will probably be colder than last winter as well. If I remember, last winter did have the beast from the east, so whether we get that depth of cold that we had at the very end of last winter, we may not do. But overall, the cold should be more evenly distributed through this winter, and it should be a slightly colder winter than 2017-18. For eastern parts of Europe, I know we have people watching across Europe, so the established and central and northern areas of Europe and the northeast are favoured to have really quite a cold winter, maybe even a very cold winter up there. For eastern and southeastern parts of Europe, if the forecast is right, you would tend to favour a milder winter, really, through the Balkans going down in towards Greece and Turkey. You would expect it to be a little bit milder there. And a very wet winter seems likely, especially late on, perhaps not particularly early on, but later on as that negative NAO gets going with the southerly tracking jet stream. You would expect that we start to get some really quite wet weather going through the Mediterranean. So it could be a pretty wild ride down in the Mediterranean through the second half of winter in particular, with a lot of wet weather to come there. And in terms of Christmas, I think we do probably favour a rather slightly increased chance of a colder Christmas. That's why it's very difficult, of course. It's very hard to pinpoint weather down to just a couple of days. But I would suspect that we probably favour a rather colder Christmas this year. Whether that does verify remains to be seen. Right, that's as much as I can do for you, I think. So, I hope you've enjoyed the updates this season. I hope you found them interesting and informative. And it's been a really long season of updates. It always amazes me how you manage to keep following these updates. I just hope that you've been enjoying them. And I know it's been a bit of a slog, but hopefully we've done something really special with these winter updates. And I hope in future years people will be able to go back and look at winter updates, look at all the information that's contained within them, and get something useful from them. If you would like any changes to be made to winter updates, so if there's anything that you'd like to be taken out or you think we should add, please let me know, and we'll think about that when we come to do the winter 2019-20 updates. And the first update for winter 2019-20 will be in just around 6 months' time, actually, when we do the winter 2019-20 NEO forecast in the summer. But that's pretty much everything I'm going to tell you. Just to say that if you've been enjoying the winter updates and all the updates at Gazlovids, and you would like to consider becoming a patron for Gazlovids to help fund the website, then you can do so through the Gazlovids Patreon account. So this is the Gazlovids Patreon page. We link to this at all of the pages at Gazlovids and in the description at YouTube. Sorry, it's been a really long down, very late, I'm really tired, so I'm struggling to get words out a little bit. I hope you'll bear with me. So, in terms of Patreons, to become a patron, you just need to come to Gazlovids Patreon page, and then you sign up for an account, and then you give us an ongoing donation, anything as much as $1 a month upwards. It's greatly appreciated. We're trying to get to 50 patrons by Christmas. Not sure we'll be able to do it, but it would be nice if we could. Alternatively, you could just give us a one-off donation through the Gazlovids PayPal page. This is it, the Gazlovids PayPal page. Again, you would just come here and sign into your PayPal account, and then you will be able to give us a one-off donation. And again, it's helping us to pay for websites, it's helping us to keep all of the content completely free and be able to bring you the content as you want it and as you need it. So a big thank you to all of you for your support for doing that. There's also the Amazon shop, which I'm sure you all know about. And I think that pretty much covers everything that I've got to tell. So it's a little bit shorter this compared to what I normally do for the winter forecast, but it's really late. I lost the first recording, so I just hope this one has gone okay. I think we've covered all of the important points. I'm going to leave you with just a little written summary, just again going over everything that we discussed in the video, so you've got it clear in your mind what we're forecasting and what we're expecting to happen. So I'll get rid of that, and I'll get rid of the camera. There we go. And then I'll just leave you with this, which is the winter 2018-19 forecast summary. A big thank you to all of you for watching. And again, thanks so much for your support over these past 3 months with these winter updates, and I really do hope that you've enjoyed them.